my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt-Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place for women to come together to share their childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from women all over the world. Today's episode is sponsored by Grove Collaborative. We all know we should be cutting down on our plastic waste, but it can feel overwhelming. Committing to making a few small changes around the house can make a big impact. And Grove Collaborative will help you cut down on plastic use easily. Grove Collaborative delivers all natural home, beauty, and personal care products directly to you. Join over 2 million families who have shopped Grove Collaborative to buy products that are good for their homes, their family, and the environment. Make your home more sustainable this year. Now, for a limited time, when my listeners go to grove.co/birthhour, you'll receive a free 5-piece set from Grove so you can swap out plastic in an easy way. Plus, you'll get free shipping and a free 60-day VIP trial. Go to grove.co/birthhour to get this exclusive sustainable swaps offer. grove.co/birthhour. Before we get to today's episode, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to all of our listeners, supporters via Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the Birth Hour, you can get access to our hundreds of archived episodes, a private Facebook group, and bonus content every month. To join, you can head over to patreon.com/birthhour, and you'll also be entered in a huge giveaway we have going on for our new members and current members that's valued at over $1,400. So for more information on that, head over to patreon.com/birthhour. Today's guest is Brett. Brett used yoga a lot throughout her pregnancy. She's a yoga teacher and has some online yoga classes as well. And she talks about how she really wanted a home birth, and she and her husband were kind of on different pages. And so they planned for 2 different scenarios, and you'll hear how it ended up when she shares her story. Hi, Brett. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me, Bryn. I'm so glad to be here. I listen to your podcast religiously while pregnant. I'm sure everyone tells you that. But
not everyone, but I appreciate it every time. I'm glad it was helpful in your preparation.
Oh, it really was.
All right. So let's hear a little bit about you and your family before we get into your story.
Sure. So I am a yoga teacher. My pregnancy was a surprise. That's a big part of the story. I mean, I was married. My husband and I definitely wanted kids eventually. I think we'd been married 18 months or something like that. But baby was definitely on something we were thinking about long term, but nothing that we had planned for in the moment. So it kind of rocked my world in a bit of a way, obviously. I was really focused on growing my yoga business at the time, which was just kind of in that place where it was going from a hobby to more of a career and really starting to bring in income. So I was really nervous because at the same time, to paint the picture, my father was very, very ill. And this was going to play into the birth story later, but he had liver cancer. He's now passed away. But during that time, it was like right around the time that his health was starting to really take a bit of a turn. And so amidst all of this, I found out I was pregnant. My parents are divorced. My mom remarried, but my dad never did. So I'm so close to my dad, and I was sort of his sole care provider. So throughout the backdrop of the pregnancy, my husband and I were sort of trying to figure out what were we going to do with this situation that was unfolding with my father, because we lived in the Bay Area in California and he was still in New York. So then it's like, boom, you're pregnant on top of all of this. I felt so many different emotions. And I think that's something that's maybe not talked about enough. I mean, even for women who are trying actively to get pregnant, that then when you do get pregnant, it's not always joy. It's just kind of like funny looking back. I'm just sharing this just in case anyone else has had this experience. Yes. So how I knew, I was teaching yoga class and I was out of breath. Like I was like, really like, whoa, am I out of shape or what's happening? And I think my period was also a little bit late, but that's kind of normal for me. It was really this incredible shortness of breath. And I eventually took a test and again, this is kind of like a foreshadow of the birth story too. But I was like, I think there's 2 lines, but this one's really faded, so I'm not sure. So I'm not pregnant. This test is wrong. So I just like went back to work. And it wasn't until my husband came home later that evening and looked at the test himself. And he was like, this is definitely positive. Like, can you see this? And so then we took another one and it was positive, and we were just staring at each other, like jaws kind of half open, like not knowing what to say or do. I mean, it was like a whoa, like a moment of confusion. And I just like to share that because there was a lot of mixed emotions. I think the fairy tale that you have in your head is that, you know, you're like praying for the pink strip or whatever, and then everyone's joyous and jumping up and down. But that was sort of how this pregnancy kicked off. So that's the backdrop.
Got it. Okay. So with that being the start of it, how did the rest of your pregnancy go?
I was really lucky in that I had a pretty great pregnancy. I remember the first trimester, you know, all the normal things, being tired, a little tired, definitely out of breath as someone who, whether I'm filming for my YouTube channel or teaching classes in person, like I'm very active. So noticing the actual shortness of breath and just how I really wasn't able to perform the way I was used to being able to. That was pretty shocking. I also went into overdrive because I knew a lot of the way my business works is that I, you know, put out these yoga videos, and I knew that I do a lot of prenatal content, but I also wanted to stock up on content before I got really big. So that first trimester, I was actually pushing myself pretty hard to do a lot of filming so that I would have content to release in my membership and, you know, all this stuff. I think a lot of women, it's like, you're like, whoa, how's this going to affect my career? I need to really prep before I have this baby. So it was a busy time. I remember the biggest thing that saved me during first trimester, because I found my digestion really slowed down, is these celery shakes. I would like grind up celery and lemon and honey, and I would drink it every morning. And that kept me eliminating really smoothly. That and being really active. And the other big thing I did during the pregnancy was I got a lot of additional, I had already done prenatal certifications, but I did even more. I flew to New York. I studied with a really incredible teacher who focuses more on the energetics of prenatal and the Kundalini yoga side of prenatal, which is a little bit different than the typical, just more gentle prenatal yoga a lot of your listeners might be familiar with. And so I was very active, and she was very pro squatting. She said to do, this teacher of mine, I think it was, and she's like 80 or something. She's incredible. She's such a firecracker. She has so much energy. She said to do, I think, 54 squats a day and walk 3 miles a day. So I was doing that best I could amidst everything else. To me, being and staying active during pregnancy was everything. Instead of kind of giving in to the fatigue and the naps, I would try to go for walks. I would do some squats. I know this isn't the approach that's best for everyone, but it worked really well for me. Like the minute I would do those things, the nausea would go away. I'd kind of get an endorphin, a little bit of an endorphin high kick. I was also running during the pregnancy as well. So I think just staying active is what really got me through it.
Yeah. And had you thought much about what type of birth you wanted?
Yes. So this is where there's a lot of controversy in the story. Getting exposed to the teacher and the yoga community in New York at this training I did really opened my eyes, because I think I did that training when I was around 4 months pregnant or 3 months pregnant, still pretty early. So I hadn't done a ton of thinking, and the pregnancy was also a surprise, right? So it's not like I had been pondering my ideal birth. I mean, this was just all, I just felt like it was all being thrown at me. And what I discovered is that there were so many women choosing home birth. And that really sparked my interest, because my father's been so sick, and he was sick my whole life. The cancer was symptomatic of hepatitis C, which he'd had since he was in Vietnam as a young man. So I don't think anyone loves hospitals, but I had also, my father felt like he really couldn't find doctors who understood how much pain he was in, his whole situation. He felt very slighted by the medical community, which I don't think is the fault of anyone in particular. It's just there's many parts and ways that our system is so broken when it comes to giving people really holistic care. So I loved this idea of being able to birth at home, hire my own midwife. Of course, I'm super athletic, into yoga, into meditation. So it just seemed perfect for me. So I was so excited. And my husband did not love this idea. He thought I'd lost my mind. He was like, you definitely have to give birth in a hospital. There's all these things that could go wrong. And I was pretty convinced that I could also have a really empowering birth experience in our hospital. I went and toured it. I felt like things could be okay either way. But this was really interesting because something inside me really wanted the midwife. Even if I wasn't going to have a home birth, I told my husband, I was like, I want the midwife because I want really this total care, right, of someone coming to my house and not having to drive to our OBGYN was in a hospital. And I said, the angle I was kind of going for was like, let's just hire one because then no matter what happens, even if we end up deciding we want to go to the hospital, she can come with us as like a super doula. So that's kind of where we ended up agreeing. We didn't really tell our families about this because I knew our families would think we were insane.
Did you tell your midwife this plan?
I did, I think. Okay. I think I was like, I really want a home birth. My husband's really concerned. Mm-hmm. My approach was very much like, we're going to see how I feel in the moment.
Right.
I've never done this before. So if I'm freaking out and we need to go to the hospital, we'll all go to the hospital. And if everything's fine, we'll all stay here. I specifically chose a midwife who had been at the hospital that our insurance is associated with many, many times. So if we did end up there, she kind of knew the ropes and all those things. But it's interesting looking back when we get into the birth story, when my husband didn't want me to have the midwife, or it was like that might not happen, or he thought it was frivolous or extravagant to pay for, there was something in me, and ultimately looking back, this was my intuition speaking, is what I believe, was that I had to have the midwife. And you'll see why as we go through the story, because without her, we would have been in a huge mess. So I think some small part of me knew that this had to happen, that it was essential. And, insurance didn't cover it, and it was a huge expense. But I loved that she came to the house. I loved getting to know her. And I loved that throughout the pregnancy, even though everyone was naysaying me about this, that I held this vision of this potential home birth that I'd be able to have and just do naturally and have no interventions. And obviously, being this ultra yogini person, right? This was very, very appealing to me as the ultimate, pregnancy is the ultimate fusion of body, mind, spirit, right? So, that's kind of what was happening during the pregnancy.
Got it. Well, did you do any childbirth classes or anything else to prepare, or mostly just yoga?
I did tons and tons of yoga and tons of Kundalini yoga in particular, which again is a different style of yoga than I think a lot of women who even do prenatal yoga are familiar with. And it's what I also teach now in my course and prenatal programs. What's different about it is that it actually creates and triggers. So instead of just, doing gentle breath work and gentle stretching, you do all that too. But it actually tries to sort of simulate the pain or sensation is probably a better word of labor. So that style of yoga is very much training you how to stay calm amidst discomfort. So a lot of what I was doing was these arm exercises where you hold your arms up above your head for a long time, which of course is a very different sensation than labor. But what starts happening is your brain starts saying, this is too hard. I want to take my arms down, right? Why am I doing this? Stop, stop, stop. And then this style of yoga actually allows you to practice how to stay calm and stay with sensation, even in moments of extreme stress. Doing this kind of yoga and practicing this, I had been practicing this style of yoga for years, and many people think it's because it has a lot of this breath of fire breath work, this particular type of yoga. where you snap the navel back. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, Kundalini yoga is just not appropriate for pregnant women. Well, okay, that one breathing technique is not appropriate for pregnant women, but the philosophy in this style of yoga, it's actually perfect for pregnant women. So I was doing a lot of that kind of, not just the breathe, let's take it easy yoga, but like, let's see how I can strengthen my nervous system type of yoga. And I think so much of birth is about mindset, which I don't see taught enough in prenatal classes. Mm-hmm. So I had done this additional, 100 hours of prenatal certification on top of whatever I already had during the pregnancy. So I felt like I had all this prenatal education, but my husband hadn't had anything. And this actually leads us into the birth story, because 9 days before my due date, I had signed us up for this birth movement class because I was like, I want my husband to know how to massage me during this process. And if we go to this class, maybe he'll learn some techniques because he's not really the touchy-feely type. So to set the stage a little bit, my due date was November 8th, and my son was born on October 30th, the day after this birth class. So he came 9 days earlier than expected, which everyone tells you your first baby's never going to come early. So again, surprise after surprise. But I think going to that birth class with my husband, or birth movement class, it was a great class. She kind of got us all on the floor and, showing the men how different positions you can labor in, and then how the husband or partner can support you by pressing on your back, that type of thing. I think something in that class shifted the energy somehow. And then after he and I took that class together, again, this is 10 days before the due date, so we were like slipping in the education just under the wire. My husband went to hang out with my sister-in-law, and I said, I think I want to go home and take a nap, which again, very strange because I wasn't the napping sort this entire pregnancy. It might have been the first nap I ever took. And again, I think my body knew that labor was coming and wanted to rest up beforehand. So I went home and I took Bryn. It was like the best nap ever. It was so good. It was like 3 to 5 p.m. or something. I was just so blissed out, and I woke up and I felt great. And my husband and I had dinner. And then after dinner, I'd been having some Braxton Hicks contractions in those, past few weeks, but they were high. They were high in my belly. So they felt like they were coming at me from above. And then after we had dinner that night, for the first time, they felt more like period cramps, like lower in my belly. And so I remember saying to my husband, I think I'm going to have a baby in 10 days. Like, I think these sensations are changing. This is exciting. And he was glad because, again, especially, during this exact week, my father, still in New York, had been admitted to the ER. So we were managing from afar, trying to figure out what was going on at the ER, talking to different doctors and nurses. I mean, it's such a hard situation for any family to be in, but especially like not being able to be there. So I was dealing with a lot of stress. I was trying to get a ton done in my business before the baby arrived. So my husband was actually really worried that I was going to have like all this increased cortisol levels and the baby was going to come way after its due date. So he was really happy that I kind of said that, it felt like, oh, I'm going to have a baby in 10 days. So I went to bed that night. I remember tossing and turning a lot, and I had to go to the bathroom a lot, which I think is pretty normal for all women when you're like, 9 months pregnant, you're peeing a lot at night. But what I noticed that night is I felt constipated. Like I really felt like I had to poop. So I was waking up in the middle of the night, going to pee, and then I was doing like these little squats in my bathroom, kind of like moving side to side. And I was like, I just must be really backed up. Like my digestive system is just not working. And this probably happened 3 or 4 times throughout the night, which again should have kind of been a signal because I don't usually like squat in my bathroom and move around before or after peeing, but I was totally doing that. But I just went back to bed, and it was kind of crazy actually, because I just wake up, go do that, and then fall back asleep. And then, again, 3 or 4 times throughout the night. And then I think the 4th time I saw it was 6 a.m. So I was like, great, I'm just going to start my day. But I still had that period cramp sensation and a little bit the sensation of needing to poop. So, but again, it's crazy how denial takes over, because I was just like, I must be constipated. I must have eaten something. Or, slowly I was starting to be like, maybe I'm going to have the baby in like 3 or 4 days. So my body wants to clear everything out of me. That makes a lot of sense. So at 6 a.m., I'm waking up, I'm having these little period cramps, husband's still asleep. And I'm like, I'm going to do my favorite thing in the whole world, take a hot bath. And I heard lots of birth stories where people spent time in the bathtub. So I ran a super hot bath. I brought a book. This is like hysterical. I thought I was going to do some like leisurely reading in the bathtub. And I also brought some yoga blocks and things in case, I think I was using it to prop up the book. I don't know, but I know there was a lot of yoga blocks in my bathroom. I think because I had been kind of playing around and squatting earlier in the evening. And what happened when I got in the bath, as relaxing as the hot water was, is things did not slow down at all. The cramps kept intensifying. It just kept getting stronger. And at 7 a.m., my husband eventually was kind of up and around. And he was like, what's going on? And I told him, I was like, I'm having these period cramps. I kind of feel like I need to poop. I don't know what's going on. And he says, all right, well, you seem fine. I'm going to go walk the dog, and I'm going to go call your dad and all the hospitals in New York. And, there was like a lot of stuff we were managing, right? So I was like, okay, that's fine, go. So my husband left the house for about an hour, and I was just in the bathtub with things, again, kind of like intensifying. And I had sort of 3 stations. One was the bathtub. The other was the toilet. I just sit on the toilet. And the other station was just the bathroom floor, kind of like moving around, squatting, and on all fours. And so I just kept moving between these stations, kind of like a CrossFit cycle or something. And everyone had told me that, again, first babies never come early. So there was this element of denial. And then I had a very close friend of mine, a yoga student of mine who also became a really close friend. She had given birth a couple weeks before me. She was in great shape, similar, I guess, way of preparing and body to mine, right? And she had a 36-hour labor. So my perspective during this whole period was just like, this is our like one of 35, right? And everyone always tells you everyone goes to the hospital too soon and all these things. So I was just like, don't make a big deal of this. And I was just kind of moving through these stations in the bathroom. My husband eventually comes back and he was like, you're still in here? Like, what's going on? And I said, I think you should download a contraction app on your phone and give it to me. So he did. And when I used the contraction app, it was telling me that the contractions were 2.5 minutes apart. And I remember being very, very confused because what is it that they tell everyone, Bryn? It's 411, right?
Yeah, some people say 511, but most people will say 411.
And so what does that stand for? It's like...
So it's 4 minutes apart, lasting for a minute for at least an hour.
Okay. So I think I had remembered 411, and then I was just like so confused because I was like, mine are 2.5 minutes apart and I haven't started labor yet. Like, this is so weird. And I was like, this app must be broken or something. Like, it was just crazy. So I was just like, I'm not timing this anymore. This is ridiculous. And then the worst part is that these contraction apps all have like ads on them. I don't know if other people have seen this. So it's like, download this or buy this. I was just like, throw this phone away. This is not. So then from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., it was kind of just more of the same, like tub, toilet, bathroom floor. It felt like period cramps. It felt like having to poop. And I was also just really confused because I was like, I know this having to poop sensation because I hadn't pooped, right? So I was like, I know that this sensation is associated with late stage labor, thanks to informative podcasts where women speak openly, like yours and a couple others that I talked to. But I was just in such denial that I could be in late stage labor. So my husband was like, this is crazy. You need to get in bed. He actually tried to pull me away from the bathroom and put me in bed at one point. And it was just like I was in bed for like 2 minutes. And then right away I was like, up, need to sit on the toilet. Like the toilet was like my happy place. I just wanted to be sitting on the toilet. It was my favorite spot. And this point, I began to get a little concerned because it was a lot of sensation. I mean, the contractions were 2.5 minutes apart. They were intense, and I'd been doing it about an hour. And I kind of had this moment with myself. I remember sitting in the bathtub after, one of the cramps and just thinking, I could maybe do this for 3 or 4 hours and it would be like the hardest thing I've ever done, maybe 6, but there's no way I can do this for 30 hours. So I started to get pretty worried because, again, I thought everything I was experiencing was like very, very early labor. My husband said, why don't we call the midwife and check in? And luckily we had ordered a birth kit, so we had some things at home. Our midwife was amazing. She was our age, so we were kind of friends with her, and she was just the calmest person, which I think is a really great characteristic for someone in this line of work, right? So I think my husband actually, he didn't even call her. He texted her, and she called us back. And I remember as my husband was talking to her on the phone, things just started to intensify even more to the point where for the first time ever, I was vocalizing, like screaming, grunting, making noise as these period cramps, as I called them, never used the word contraction, were, really low in my belly. And I think my husband maybe thought I was just kind of like putting on a show for the midwife. But what she said is she said, listen, I'm on my way to meditation class. I'm going to swing by your guy's house. I'll just take the baby's heartbeat, make sure everything's okay. So we're waiting for her to show up. And now it's probably around 8:45 a.m. And I remember sitting on my heels on the floor of the bathroom, and things started to just keep intensifying. Like right after my husband hung up the phone with the midwife, it was like just building. And I remember really distinctly like having one contraction or rush or whatever the word you want to use is, expansion. I love that word for contractions. That was so intense that I was sitting on my heels in the bathroom. I was holding my husband's calf, and he was wearing just like guy sweatpants. And I squeezed his calf and was pulling so hard that I pulled his pants down. And after that, whoa, this is not good. And after that big contraction, I got on my favorite spot, the toilet, and I had another one. And this one was unlike anything I'd experienced up to that point. And I felt something coming out of me. It was just like, it felt like a horror movie. I like looked at my husband, I'm sitting on the toilet, and I screamed at him. I was like, something is coming out of me. And I remember just being like, you need to look at what's going on. So I kind of like lifted one leg while I'm on the toilet. I made my husband look down there. He didn't say this at the time, but what he saw was like a squishy ball, basically like a squishy ball. So he was like totally freaked out. He did a good job of hiding it, but he was like, is that our baby's head? Is our baby's head mush? Like, so he was like, I'm going to call the midwife back. So he called our midwife back, and he said, there's something coming out of Brett. I'm pretty, I'm worried. What do you think we should do? And she said, well, why don't we FaceTime? So
yay, technology.
I know. So then this is where this story becomes basically like an iPhone ad or a FaceTime ad. Because he turns on FaceTime. She's just sitting in her car, like holding her, she had like one of those things where you put your phone on the dashboard or whatever. So she's just like driving along, la, la, la. And my husband's like filling her in. And she said, well, why don't, Jake's my husband. She said, Jake, take your phone and put it under the toilet, so I can see what's going on. So again, I like lift my leg again, and my husband kind of swoops the iPhone underneath there and pulls it back out. And then our midwife, Morgan, is so calm. She says, all right, so that's the bag of waters. It probably means the baby's going to come soon. Jake, can you get Brett on all fours? And again, I was like glued to this toilet. I was just like shaking my head like, no, 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 I can't move. I can't move. Somehow we did get me onto all fours. So I was holding the edge of the bathtub, kind of like with my knees on our bath mat. And I had I think either one or two more big pushes like that. I mean, it was like 3 minutes after she said that. And this is where the yoga blocks came in handy. My book, still unread, was just by the tub. But my husband actually kind of propped up the iPhone on these yoga blocks so my midwife could sort of see what was happening. And at this point, I sort of finally left denial land. And I was like, I'm having a baby. I'm having a baby right now. And this was sort of cool because instead of being like, why am I having this poop sensation? Why are these period cramps so intense? I finally, once I got on all fours after hearing the midwife say, the baby's going to come soon, I finally gave myself permission to like push or to go with the energy of what I felt was happening to me for the first time. And I think it was just, maybe it was two, I think it was one big push with me on all fours, and the bag of waters broke. The next thing I heard was crying. It was such a crazy moment because I hadn't seen anything. I was looking at the bathroom wall, holding the side of the bathtub. I could hear my son, and I knew he was healthy, I think, like on a subconscious level, because he was crying a lot. So he was clearly like breathing, like there was a baby in the room that was breathing and healthy. And I think it was maybe on your show actually that I heard some birth story about like this moment that women have like before they can like look at their kid. I mean, I definitely had this moment where I was just like, whoa. And I wasn't ready to turn around yet. It just felt so surreal because he just came out with the bag of waters. There was no, I felt like so many of the stories I heard, it was like, first there was the head and then there was the torso. And then, like I never experienced any of that. He just projectiled literally onto my husband and then peed on him immediately, apparently. And I think my husband actually had to say like, can you turn around? Like, can you participate here? Because I was just like frozen. And it was total chaos. Like the midwife was talking to us through the iPhone. At the time, we had a gigantic German Shepherd who was in the bathroom with us, barking his head off, standing right behind my husband. My husband has the baby in one arm. And I finally turn around and I'm just like in shock. My husband starts to move because the dog was trying to get at me to put our dog Zeus in his kennel. And then as he starts walking away to put Zeus in the kennel, I'm like, stop, because the cord hadn't been cut, right? The baby was still, attached. So my husband handed me the baby, went and put our dog in the kennel so we could, maybe hear something. Because, he was obviously confused and worried with the screaming and everything. And yeah, then I was holding my son on the bathroom floor. Morgan, our midwife, was just being so incredible. She was like, I'm on my way. This whole time she had been driving now, diverted from wherever she was going and driving towards our house. So she said, just stay where you are. She was like, don't move, just stay where you guys are. I'm 10 minutes away. And so I just was sitting on the bathroom floor with my son, probably for about 10 minutes. And it was so incredible. I mean, he was just perfect. Of course, he had that vernix, a little bit like gray, but he wasn't bloody. He was just picture perfect little baby. And what really blew my mind is he was chubby. He had like these rolls of fat like around his arms. And it was just so mind blowing because especially with him coming early. And then, I was kind of such a fitness fanatic throughout the pregnancy and eating really healthy. And sometimes I just worried I wasn't eating enough. A lot of times people were like, you're not as big as you should be. Like when I saw my OB. So I had this I think subconscious little worry that, maybe I was exercising too much or that my belly wasn't as big as it was supposed to be, and he was malnourished somehow. So to see this like super chunky baby was just mind blowing. And then, thank goodness, our midwife arrived. I just didn't move. I mean, I was so afraid that if I moved, something would hurt, something would happen. So I just stayed glued to this bathroom floor. And then, of course, when she arrived, she was just incredible. I mean, she knew exactly what to do. She was in her zone of genius, basically. I mean, she got the bed all ready. I remember that was a huge thing. She and Jake, my husband, were just running around. And then the big thing was they had to transition me and the baby to our bed. And then once that happened, it was just so great. He was just on my chest, and we were all so happy. She did his well baby check with him just lying on my chest. We were all talking, and it was just wonderful. She was just taking our vitals and, making sure everything was fine. And I think we were just so happy to have her, to have someone who knew what they were doing. I eventually, after, probably an hour or 90 minutes of just being in this cocoon glow in my bed with the two of them, really wanted to take a shower. So I was like, can we do the placenta? Can we birth the placenta? Because I want to shower and I just really want this over with. I was pretty nervous because obviously I was scared to experience those period cramp poopy sensations again. But she was, again, such an expert. She just like palpated my belly. She kind of gently tugged the cord. She told me not to worry. She was like, listen, this is going to be, the placenta's squishy. This is going to be super fast and easy. And it was. It happened really fast. And honestly, I was just on this high of oxytocin and adrenaline, I think. She helped me shower, and my husband kind of held the baby a lot for the first time. She told me that what I had was called precipitous labor. Have you ever heard of that term, Bryn? I had never.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We've had quite a few of those stories. Yeah.
Good. So I know I've heard of fast.
I'm not sure the exact time frame. I feel like it's anything less than 3 hours, maybe.
That's exactly what she said. Because my labor was 2.5. She said it's anything that's less than 3. Because I had heard of fast birth stories too. Not that many. Because most people, I felt like all I ever heard from anyone was that labor is so long. Don't go to the hospital too soon.
Especially first time.
Especially first time. I mean, I think that's what led to just me being in this state of such insane denial. I mean, it was part me being crazy in denial, but it was also, I think a large part what everyone had told me. Mm-hmm. So she stitched me up. I did have a 2nd-degree tear, but it was just so great because we did it all just in my bed. It, hurt, but again, compared to the whole morning and what I'd been through, it was just no big deal. My son really did projectile out of me. So while it would have been great to have no tearing, I don't think that was just realistic the way this labor happened. And that's our story. I mean, it's just so interesting because I definitely wanted a natural birth, but I did not expect that I would have an unassisted home birth alone by myself with my husband.
Yeah. So how did your husband process all of this, being the one that was like convinced you guys needed to be at the hospital?
Well, he was so happy that we had Morgan, especially after I birthed the placenta. She gave us this tour of the placenta. I mean, all these kinds of things that would never happen in a hospital, which again, I have nothing against. I'd be like down to try the hospital for my second. I don't know, but it was just so special. Like she showed us the tree of life. She just completely took over. And what my husband ultimately said is like, if we hadn't hired her, the birth would have unfolded probably the same way. I mean, this baby was not going to be born in a hospital, even if we had tried to get to a hospital. It was just, by the time I really figured out it was happening, he would have been born in our driveway or in the car.
Yeah, without someone to FaceTime you through it.
Exactly. And he said, we would have ended up having to call EMTs. Mm-hmm. Like we would have ended up having to call an ambulance, and we would have had EMTs like stomping into, again, EMTs fabulous in certain situations, but I do not think it would have been the best situation for me in the bathroom floor in that moment, you know. And Morgan, our midwife, I mean, she did the laundry, she cooked us breakfast, and she was just so incredible. And my husband was also so upset about, you know, the additional cost of all of this by the time, you know, because she came back to do all the checks and, you know, she was in our lives for the next couple of months. At the end, he just gave her an extra $1,000. He was just like, you're incredible, you know, like total convert. And then it was interesting with our families too, because we didn't tell I think I had told my family that we had told our families that we had a midwife, but that we were like planning to go to the hospital and she was going to be like our super doula and we wanted her kind of just in case. That was sort of the story, because I just knew I didn't have the time or bandwidth to deal with everyone's opinions and tell me that home birth is crazy and all that stuff. So then it was interesting to actually call. I didn't do it, but my husband had to call everyone and tell them, you know, Brett had the baby. It was a very rapid labor. She gave birth at home, but, you know, we're all fine. Everything's fine. I'm so grateful that my son was healthy, because if he hadn't been, or there had been issues, I mean, it's too frightening to even think about, right? Because we were at home and we wouldn't have maybe had the help we needed. I wish that I had called the midwife much sooner in the process, because it was never my intention. I remember feeling very alone throughout the whole process, which I've heard is normal. Like, even when I talked to the midwife about it, she was like, even if I had been here, you would have felt totally alone. But I wish she had been there before I actually pushed him out. That definitely would have been my preference. I think I would have been able to, you know, get into that kind of grounded, pushing energy a lot sooner. So I'm just so grateful he was so healthy, and he still is so healthy. He's just been a super strong little healthy guy.
So how was your postpartum experience?
Postpartum, well,
there's a story here.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, postpartum was okay. I mean, I felt like I healed down there. I started, you know, it was challenging for me, Bryn, because if you remember the first part of the story, I really like to move. Mm-hmm. So not being able to move, and then what I laughed earlier was the breastfeeding piece was extremely challenging for me, way more challenging than birth. I have a very high pain tolerance because of all this crazy yoga I do and a lot of these breathing techniques. I can kind of handle anything, including morning sickness, if I can move or go for a run or do some squats. But all of a sudden, a lot of those tools that are so phenomenal for pregnancy and birth, labor, tools I teach, couldn't help me in postpartum because I couldn't move around. It wasn't so much like dealing with pain or discomfort. It was just like sitting. I remember feeling like I was going crazy. I was like, I've never sat this much in my entire life. And my son he was just like that kid who needed like an hour per boob. Like, he was just the slowest eater ever. I remember feeling like I was losing my mind. It was very hard for me as a sort of type A Vata movement type person to spend that much time sitting still. Yeah. So the breastfeeding was something I really, really struggled with. I had abundant milk supply, like all of that was fine, but I just felt like I couldn't do anything. I mean, I literally couldn't do anything. And that was very, very challenging. And he was just such a long, slow feeder, and just that no one could help me, right? Because we weren't giving him bottles until much later, or introducing formula until much later. It was just, I felt like it was such a kind of cruel twist, because my husband loves to sit, you know, and like watch TV and be on the couch. And he, like, if the roles had been reversed, he would have been like, this is awesome. I'm doing a Netflix marathon, like, put this baby on me and I'm just going to chill. And for me and my personality type, like, I have no interest in that. I don't really even like TV that much. So it was hard. I think also when people talk about breastfeeding, or because I did a lot of research and reading. I mean, I read Ina May's Guide to Breastfeeding. Of course, a part of my studies and everything. I mean, I'd done a lot of reading and research, and so many of the books and literature out there is just about like the actual act of like how to get baby to latch and tongue ties and all those kinds of things. And what my experience was, and what I want to share with listeners, is like, once you get that figured out, you know, that's usually like a, I don't know, 72-hour or max 1 or 2 week process where like either you two figure it out or, you know, you don't. After it's figured out, it's like there is this very long road of just doing it together for, you know, however long you choose to breastfeed. And that there's like a monotony. And again, I know so many other women, because my mother was like, I loved breastfeeding you. It was so magical. It was the best time of my life. I didn't like it. I really just struggled with it a lot. So if there's other people out there who feel the same way, I mean, I'm glad. I think I'm glad I did it. But it was a struggle. It was really, really hard for me.
Do you think you would approach it differently with another baby?
I do. I think I would put less pressure on myself to do it for as long as I did. Mm-hmm. That's I think would be the big difference. Yeah. You know, as a first time mom and you hear, you know, how great breastfeeding is and all those things, I think I put a lot of pressure on myself. I think next time, for my own sanity, a lot of what I talk about also in my prenatal course is like your baby shares your aura, your electromagnetic field, your energetic field, according to Yogi Bhajan, for the first 3 years of life. So if your energetic field is like hateful, depleted, resentful, angry, right. That's not good. You know, breastfeeding is good. And, you know, this is such a controversial topic. So I'm sure, you know, there's lots of people who would just be like, suck it up, breastfeed. And, you know, I did. But I think with the second baby, I would maybe not put so much pressure on myself to do it for as long, or, you know, think about maybe doing some supplementing earlier, assuming I was feeling as unhappy as I was in that, you know, long postpartum period.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, mom's mental health is just as important, I think.
When mom's happy, the whole family's happy.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah. So it's important.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Do you have any resources you wanted to share?
Well, I have a free prenatal yogi resource guide on my website. So if any of your listeners are pregnant and into yoga, they can get that on my website. I can give you the URL, Bryn, but I listen to your podcast a lot. I loved Mindful Mom to Be, which is a great book. I loved the book Orgasmic Birth. I actually met the author and worked with her as part of my studies and training. I really recommend the book because I think people can be turned off by the title. It actually, I think, explains the hormones of pregnancy and what's going on in your body better than any other book I read. So it's not so much about having an orgasmic birth. It's just like a really great book to understand natural birth. So I almost feel like it kind of, I wish she had titled it something different, because I think maybe people don't get it.
Probably
they're
a lot
like,
of people discount it. Yeah. Because
far-fetched. Yeah. So if that's you, and it was me too, I actually, especially having met the author and spending some time with her, I really think it breaks everything down in a really, really cool way. I would really like to also encourage people, if you feel like you want a midwife or you have that kind of premonition that it's important to you, which ended up being very true for me, to look at how you might be able to use your HSA, your health savings account, to pay for the midwife. I was really fortunate because I actually had a high deductible health plan when I was really young, and my dad was like, just stash money in there, and it totally came in handy. So to just kind of get creative, or even if you want a doula, I think there's a way that like your FSA can maybe pay for that. So just to really do your research, I guess, especially running my own company, looking into how I could get maternity benefits during, I had never even thought of that. And meeting another pregnant woman, she was like, oh, do this research. And I actually ended up being able to get maternity benefits, even though I am a business owner. So I don't know. Those are just like some, I guess, resources and tips I would share. And then if you know, really want like my full guide to all things, like if you want to have a yogic pregnancy and birth and postpartum, get that resource list that I have for free. It's brettlarkin.com/prenatal.
Okay, great. We'll link that on the show notes page too. And then where is the best place for people to connect with you?
The best place is probably my website, which is my name, BRETT Larkin, LARKIN, brettlarkin.com. You can find me on Instagram, Larkin Yoga TV. I'm sure Bren will put all this in the show notes, but I run yoga teacher training programs that people can take online. So it's really great for new moms. I'd say probably 50% of every class is women who have small children. So it's a really high quality interactive program that you can take with your son or daughter on your lap, which is really incredible. And then if you do happen to be pregnant right now, I have the prenatal course that I developed after going through all this. It has tons of prenatal videos, lots that are gentle and calming and stretching, but then also a lot that kind of talk about this Kundalini style of yoga that I've mentioned a couple times that I really don't see taught anywhere else online, that is a lot more about strengthening your body and your mindset and your nervous system for birth. And if any of you are pregnant, because I know I listened to this a lot when I was pregnant and want to get that, I have set up a coupon code called Birth Hour, so you can get $10 off that program.
Very cool. We'll put all of those on the show notes page so people can find them. But thank you so much for coming on today to share.
Thank you, Bryn. Again, your podcast is so needed. I really loved it when I was expecting. So thanks for all you do.
All right, now I'm going to chat a little bit more about today's sponsor, Grove Collaborative. Here at the Birth Hour, we are in love with Grove Collaborative. It's an online marketplace that delivers all natural home, beauty, and personal care products directly to your door. I have a couple of favorites from Grove, like the reusable paper towels, which you can put on a regular paper towel roll. They have a really gorgeous one, actually, that you can get from them. I also love their reusable food storage and snack bag sets. They make kids' lunches and snacks just so much easier and less wasteful. And they have a lot of products, you know, that are their brand, Grove, that are amazing. And then they have a lot of other things I love, like the Earth Mama Organics products. You guys have heard me talk about them many, many times. So many amazing postpartum products for you, for healing after birth, and then things for taking care of baby without having to worry about what you're putting on their skin, because they're all organic ingredients. They also have basics that you need for baby, like diapers and wipes and things like that, that it's great to just have your shipments set up and know that you're not going to run out of things at the last minute. And one of my favorite things is just shopping on the Grove site. It's just really beautiful and seamless, and they make recommendations based on the things that you're looking at. And the style of the Grove brand is seriously gorgeous. They have so many products for your kitchen and bathroom that are so pretty. There's even this really cute foaming hand soap dispenser for kiddos' bathrooms. It's like has this like rubber with cutout stars on it. It's really cute. I'm obsessed with it. So I don't know. Who knew I would be excited about the look of my dish scrubbers and soap dispensers, but here we are. I guess I'm officially a mom. What you may not know is that Grove has sustainable swaps sets that are really the best and easiest way to start reducing your use of plastic for you and your family. And you can get it all for free when you sign up with our code. So it comes with silicone straws, reusable and washable sandwich bags, a refillable hand soap dispenser, which is just so key, and then one of their gel hand soaps that you can start with that soap dispenser right off the bat, and then a walnut scrubber sponge set, which is really pretty, just like everything else that they have. So for a limited time, you can get all of that for free with your first purchase. They have fast and free shipping on your first order, and it's really just super easy. So if you want to join me and the over 2 million households who have shopped at Grove for their healthy, sustainable home essentials, you can go to grove.co/birthhour and you'll get that free 5-piece set so that you can swap out plastic in an easy way. And again, you'll get free shipping and a free 60-day VIP trial. So head over to grove.co/birthhour to get this special offer. That's grove.co/birthhour. Thank you so much again to Brett for sharing her birth story with us. If you want more information from her, you can head over to her show notes page by going to thebirthhour.com and searching for her name in the search bar. Again, I would love to welcome you all into our private Facebook group for our listener supporters. If you're interested in joining and getting the perks of becoming a supporter, you can get more information on that over at patreon.com/birthhour or thebirthhour.com/support.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.